everybody for being here today and enjoying our wonderful experience here at our Women on the Grow Exhale House. It's been a beautiful day. We really need to be a lot longer, really. Yeah. But I wanted to stop and share with you, one of our sister friends that's a part of our tribe is really going to talk today about the theme that we had today. And that was discussing, the tricky relationships we have with mothers and daughters. It could be very tense, it could be joyful, it could be a wonderful experience, and certainly a lot of growth. Learning how to communicate, learning how to heal. But what I love about my tribe is that we're willing to be transparent and vulnerable and share our stories because we learn from each one of them. Yes. There is no perfect relationship with mothers and daughters. And so, Lena, thank you so much for sharing today. Just give us in a nutshell, what age did you have your children?
My son I had at 15 and my daughter at 16. They're 11 months apart.
So you were a teen mother like some of the mothers here today.
Yes.
And so tell us, how were you accepted or rejected by family and friends?
Well, I lost my mother at 15. I was 7 months pregnant when my mother died at the age of 45 of breast cancer.
Mm.
And so...
so she wasn't there to nurture you and walk you through the whole process?
No. And it was a trying time because I had to rely on my older sister, who's almost 4 years older than me, held my hand and kind of became the mother of the rest of us. She was the oldest girl of 6 of us. I'm the third child.
I see.
So I have a son and I have a daughter.
And so I understand that you were in Florida, then you came to California.
Yes.
And just totally disconnected from family and friends and had to just figure this thing out called motherhood on your own.
Exactly. I came to California when I was 17 with 2 little ones. Neither one of them was potty trained.
Wow.
And so I, landed in Pomona, where I live now. And I was married and basically was just kind of dumped with no family. We lived with my ex-husband's first cousin for a few months until we got our own place. So it's kind of doing everything on my own as a young teenager myself, and not really knowing what I was doing. I had younger sister and brother, but not really knowing much of anything.
Well, thank you for sharing with some of the other women here today, giving them some wisdom and some encouragement, because it is a rocky road.
Yeah.
And so we just want to kind of fast forward, because I know that you went on to get your college degree.
Yeah.
You had a wonderful career. And then there was some estrangement, I understand, with your children.
Yeah, I think the divorce brought about the estrangement. The judge gave physical custody of my son to my ex-husband. My son was about 11 at the time. And he gave me physical custody of my daughter, basically 50-50.
Okay.
My ex was very bitter because he... I kind of grew up, I just grew up in that marriage. He was off doing his own thing while I had kids in school, and while they were in school, I was in school, so I didn't have to pay babysitters. I got a job. He wouldn't help out. I had to give up that job. So basically, I went through college, and while I went through college, I worked on the days that I didn't go to college. And my schedule was such that I could go to school and be home by the time they were home.
So was there any type of bitterness or sense of abandonment that your children felt?
I think so. They were so close. They looked like twins. She kind of caught up with him, and they were tight. I think the divorce was harder on them than it was on us, and to have them physically separated was very difficult. And on top of that, my ex was very bitter, and passed that on to my son.
I see. Kind of poisoned his mind.
Definitely. Yeah. I remember my son was 11 when we divorced. The next time my son ever slept in my house, he was 27 years old.
Wow.
And so we have gone through years of trying to, get back together. And the whole idea, I think, for my ex-husband was that he wanted to be their friend, and he wanted to be the better parent, and he wanted to, just kind of take
he wanted to be the hero.
He wanted to be the hero, and the only way he could hurt me, because I didn't want him, was through the children. And so much so that my daughter went to live with him at 15. And that happened over a summer when she was supposed to be going to spend the summer with him. And while I'm at work, she was taking her clothes out of the house. And when it was time for her to go back to school, I called and she said, "Oh, I'm living with Daddy." So they kind of conspired to do that. And I was really hurt. and thought I was really a bad mother because neither one of my kids wanted to live with me.
Let's stop right there, because that is such a vulnerable confession.
Yeah.
And when other women can hear us say, I thought I was a bad mother, in fact I was a bad mother, or they thought I was a bad mother, how do we heal from that? How do we move forward with the self-loathing that I failed, that the children that I birthed don't see me as their mother?
You know, I think so many things were going on in my life at the time. I was with my current husband. We basically courted for like 4 years before we got married, and I had this issue with my father, who was still alive, and I was just going through all of these things, you know. And you think your life is okay. On the outside, I was looking pretty good. Yeah. I was, you know, moving up in my career. I became the first Black and the first female to be promoted on the police department in Rialto, and you know, I made the papers, and the governor was sending me letters, and it was a big deal. And on the outside, I was looking like I had it all together,
shining like a brand new
penny. I was like, you know, nobody would know that on the inside I was just dying because you know, I had this issue with my father, who sexually, emotionally, and physically abused me, and it was impacting my relationships. And I don't think I realized how much it was. Then if I introduced myself and people said, do you have any children? I would always say yes, but they don't live with me. And I started explaining things.
Justifying.
And then my husband said, why do you do that? You know, why do you tell people that? That's not their business. You know, this thing is really bothering you. So why are you doing this? And I really didn't understand what was going on, you know. So I still had a relationship with my daughter, but she wasn't living in my house, you know, so it was still kind of not there. I was there as mother. If I didn't hear from her, you know, I'd call and she'd call me.
So Mother's Day must have been tough.
Mother's Day was doubly tough because my mother died on Mother's Day, May 10th, 1965. So for years, Mother's Day was just,
oh my goodness.
I didn't want to get out of bed. So it's just recently that I've been able to.
When did you start to have a breakthrough that you began to seek support, you became more transparent, you began to realize how important it was for you to move forward or to reach out?
It had to be church. And God had to be. It was nothing else. And I was really getting some good word in church, and we were talking about forgiveness and all of these things. And I went back home to Florida, and I was dealing with some issues there. And my father did something. He was still alive. He did something, and it just triggered. It just triggered me.
We talk a lot about triggers.
It triggered me.
Yeah.
And I had always been afraid of him. When I took my husband back home to meet my father, my husband said to me, I don't know who you are when you're in his presence. You're like a scared little girl. Who are you? Oh my goodness. And so I, you know, whenever I spoke to him, I talked to him, I was still afraid. I remember whenever he would come home, he worked construction. He drove these big construction trucks home, and I could hear him coming down the street. I would go in the room and get in a corner and just try to be small because I didn't want any attention on me, because he if he looked at me and asked me a question and I answered him, he'd hit me because he said I was talking back. He found every occasion he found to beat me. He would still be in jail now.
You think he was afraid of being exposed?
No, I don't think that was even an issue. He was just mean. He was just mean. Mother's was mean. I have a grandmother who didn't like any of us. So it's like he was mean. He got that DNA from her. And so I had to look back at his childhood, but I'll get back on track here. So when he did what he did, he talked really bad about my mother. And said something to a grandson that my mother never even knew, and he never knew her because he was born after my mom died. And it was really negative and ugly. And I was so angry, I came back home early. And a couple of weeks later, I just woke up. It had to be the Holy Spirit. I woke up like 3 o'clock in the morning, and I went and I just started writing. And I wrote my feelings down, and the letter was to him. And it took me about 3 weeks to mail that letter after I tried to get all of my anger out of the letter so we could get to it, because I know if I tried to talk to him one-on-one, it wouldn't work. He had to be able to see the writing on the paper.
Did he read it?
Let me tell you what I did. I called my oldest sister and I said, my oldest sister, I said, I'm writing Daddy this letter and I'm going to send you a copy of it. And I called my baby sister who lived in the house with my father and I said, I'm going to send you a copy of the letter because he's going to lie about what's in the letter. I know it. He's going to lie. So I wrote the letter and I mailed it. My baby sister called and said he got the letter and he opened it and he lied about what was in the letter.
So let's get back to because we could just talk all day about that. That's a whole dynamic that needs to be healed. But when it comes to your daughter, was there a point where you guys began to heal? You began to communicate after many years of?
I think after the letter, it kind of gave me and then
gave you strength and courage.
It gave me strength and courage.
Yes.
And my sisters came to my aid when I was able to.
Did he violate your sisters?
My older sister, yes. When we started talking about it, yes, he did.
Okay.
My baby sister claims she doesn't remember, but she's been committed twice to a mental hospital and some other things. So we all think yes, and a son we think belongs to my father. So it's talk about dysfunction. So anyway, the letter gave me the opening, and it opened the door for us to try to resolve things to the point where I actually forgave him before he died. So and Holy Spirit was working with me then. So fast forward years later, my daughter is now married. She got grown children, and her youngest daughter is in Florida going to school, going to college. So while she's there, I'm sending her all of the information on my people and my sisters and my brother, and I'm saying contact your aunt and do this and do that and all of that. She never did. So my feelings were hurt. So I told my daughter, why isn't Dominique contacting my family? So she says, I don't know, she's just shy. So then my daughter goes down there to visit her because she's lonesome and she's homesick and they're best friends. So she goes down to visit my daughter, or my granddaughter, and she doesn't go visit my folks. But they go visit my ex-husband's baby mama. And I'm like, oh, okay.
So you
my sister, that just set me off. And then my sister called, my older sister called and said, what's the matter? Why aren't they visiting? What's the matter? Did we do something to them and all of that? So I just got really upset. And here I go writing another letter. I love writing letters. They get resolution. So I write this letter to my daughter, and I'm like, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and I'm just in there typing, and now we got computers, and I can send her an email, right? Because before I was sending everything to the mail. So now I'm sending, and I said, okay, it took me a day before I hit the send button on that one. So I sent it to her, and then I mailed her a copy. About a week later, I get a mailed response back from her. And it just opened up the door because everything that I thought, everything that I believed was false. She counted everything I said. She said, Mom, that's not true. I love you. You're my hero, and all of the things that I had said. And I mean, I was a little cryptic, here and there because I wanted to dig because I was hurt.
Sure.
And she just said, no, that's not true. That's not true. And I talked about her not wanting to live with me. And she said, I was waiting for you to come get me. And you never did. But she left on undercover of darkness with her father, and they conspired. So I thought that's what she wanted. But she wanted me to come get her and rescue her.
She wanted you to fight for her.
You don't know what's in your daughter's heads. You gotta talk. Where's Diana? You gotta talk to Mama. You and Wendy need to talk. Write her if you can't get it out, because I found that that's my voice. And you know what I titled my letter to my daughter? Finding my voice.
Yes.
And I wrote, and I wrote, and I wrote, and I got it all out because I couldn't.
That's why you're so healthy today.
Yes. I have written 4 letters in my life. To my father, to my best friend who hurt my feelings, to my daughter, and finally to my ex-husband, and forgave him.
What you say?
Yes.
Is that powerful, lady?
I'm telling you,
Is that powerful?
Write it for your own good, if nothing else. Even if you don't mail it, write it.
And even if you don't get the outcome that you want.
Yes.
So now how are you and your daughter?
Awesome. My daughter and I and my son meet at least once a month for dinner. I found out that they know nothing about my side of the family. My daughter didn't even know my mother's name. So now we're talking, we are meeting. I told her the other day I wanted something, and the next day, about a week later, here it comes at my door. I was going to order it, but in fact I did order it, and she ordered it for me and sent it to me, and I'm like, wow. So now the relationship is so much better because we're talking, and we're talking on a regular basis, and we're not hiding it, and I'm being vulnerable, I'm being open. And I'm breaking down those boundaries.
Yes.
My word was boundaries.
Yes.
Because I set up myself as this strong person.
That didn't
and
need
I didn't need anybody.
Yes, yes.
And they always thought, my children always thought I didn't need them. My ex-husband played the victim role. He played it so well that they would go visit him and they take care of him. And I was the strong one.
Yes.
I was superwoman.
Yes.
And they just thought I was just okay. I was just the bomb.
Wow.
And I'm dying inside.
Yes.
Because I think my children don't love me.
This is so rich because we're talking about, in a nutshell, what we're hearing is that you can reclaim the time.
Yes.
You can forgive.
Yes.
You can recover.
Yes.
You can find your peace and your joy. You can find your voice. And what I love about it is that not everyone gets a chance to have a healed relationship. Some of our mothers have passed on, and we never get to have that conversation. So I wanted my audience to be able to see an example of what it is to go through periods, months, years of being disconnected from those that you love, and to see that it is possible to heal. It takes courage. It took courage what you did, but you also were sick and tired of being sick and tired. And by you being in law enforcement, of course you had to have this facade of being strong in your career. But inside, as you said, you were falling apart. So I hope this blesses someone today. And I thank you so much, Lena, for sharing your story. It has so many layers, so many dimensions. And I wish we had more time, but I'm sure somebody today is blessed by your testimony. And I thank you so much. How many of you were blessed by that?
Ladies, we all have a book.
Yeah.
Everybody can write their chapter, and we can publish it and make a movie.
Well, we talked about that in the time. I want to thank Lena Robinson for being on my Women on the Grow team, and especially today for sharing your very raw, painful, and tragic testimony. But yet you are an overcomer, and yet there was reconciliation with your children. So for those of you that watched this entire short, very short testimony and interview, you heard about child abuse, family dysfunction, teenage pregnancy, even incest. Makes you just want to shrug your shoulders and say, why, God, why? We heard about forgiveness and the power of prayer, separation from parent and child, and reconciliation. We learned about what happens when there's miscommunication and lies and manipulation, and when people poison your thinking to twist it so that they are the hero. Yet we learned about resiliency from Lena. We learned about the power of prayer. We gained courage with her transparency and her vulnerability to share deep secrets and pain. We learned that as women, we often wear a mask. We have external success as she did, but we have an internal mess. I'm going to say it again. Some of us have external success, but an internal mess. And this is why Women on the Grow exists, to help us to break those generational, dysfunctional strongholds of secrets and pain and dysfunction and childhood abuse, so that we can be like Lena and have a brave conversation, so that we can have victory and not live our lives as a victim, so that we can not only survive, but thrive. I thank you so much, Miss Lena Robinson, for sharing your testimony, and I'm sure someone that watched it was blessed and inspired. Unfortunately, there's so many more stories like this, but today we focused on her particular story. And I can tell you, as a life coach and as a minister, And as a woman, a wife, a mother and grandmother and life coach, I hear so many stories that just cause you to shudder. But yet there is victory. But yet there is God. But yet there are still people that don't survive, that are medicated for the rest of their lives, that are angry for the rest of their lives, that walk around like a victim for the rest of their lives, never fulfill their purpose or their destiny for the rest of their lives. But yet there are people like Lena who turn their pain into purpose. This is Jewel Diamond Taylor, the founder of Women on the Grow, and I hope you'll stay tuned to more upcoming INNERviews that I love to facilitate and host. Be sure to check out my YouTube channel. There are more interviews there for you to watch and to learn and to be inspired. God bless you, and stay in the light.